Craft matters, in small ways, like how a coffee is brewed, and in not so small ways, like how your money is cared for, which is why for 160 years, UBS has elevated banking to a craft, tailoring unique strategies that combine human expertise with the latest technologies, all happening across 24 time zones and 12 key financial hubs, with you at the heart of it all. UBS. Advice is our craft.
You're listening to The Globalist, first broadcast on the 8th of December 2025 on Monocle Radio. The Globalist, in association with UBS. Live from London, this is The Globalist with me, Emma Nelson. A very warm welcome to today's programme. Coming up, Thailand launches airstrikes along the border with Cambodia. Our Bangkok correspondent will join me in just a moment for the latest. Also ahead in the next 60 minutes... A year since the end of the Assad regime, we're in Damascus to examine Syria's pathway to recovery. Hong Kong holds local elections as residents continue to mourn those who've died in the residential tower fires. And we go through the papers. We look at the future of entertainment as Netflix buys Warner Brothers Discovery. And
my grandmother, like a lot of Italian nonne, makes her own homemade limoncello, coffee liqueur and amaro. We started with her amaro recipe and we spent over a year trying to figure out how to get the same flavor profile, but without the alcohol.
We meet the man who, with a little help from his grandma, made an alcohol-free Negroni that actually tastes nice. Plus the latest news from the cinema too. That's all coming up on The Globalist, live from London. First, a quick look at what else is happening in today's news. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is in London for talks with the UK Prime Minister and French President. Moscow has welcomed the US revision of Washington's national security strategy, which now states that Europe is facing civilizational erasure and does not cast Russia as a threat to the US. And a water leak at the Louvre Museum has damaged hundreds of books just weeks after jewellery worth more than $100 million was stolen. Stay tuned to Monocle Radio throughout the day for more on these stories. But first, Thailand has launched airstrikes along the border with Cambodia. Both sides have accused the other of attacking first. To bring us more, I'm joined now from Bangkok by Monocle's senior Asia editor, James Chambers. Good afternoon, James.
Morning, Emma.
So what is the latest, please?
I guess the latest we're hearing from the Thai side, I should say I live in Bangkok, so most of my official information comes from the government here. And the Thais are saying that yesterday, on Sunday, and then overnight, some of the Thai soldiers along the border came under attack from the Cambodians, a mixture of gunfire and missile attacks. And one soldier has been killed, one Thai soldier, and 8 soldiers have been injured. And there's been an evacuation order for Thais living along the border to clear out. And then we woke up this morning to news that the Thais had launched airstrikes, as you mentioned. And the Thai army is saying that these airstrikes are very precise. They are targeting military facilities, including a casino, which they're saying has been used to launch drone attacks on Thailand. So that's where we stand. Of course, the Cambodians are saying the exact opposite. They're saying the Thais started it. They say they haven't retaliated at all. And they're saying 3 of their people have been injured in all this. So, yes, we've gone back to where things were in.
Indeed. The line is not helping us very much, but we will persevere, James, if that's all right with you. And let's go back to where we were, that it is it's just a little over a month since Donald Trump oversaw a ceasefire agreement between Thailand and Cambodia. What's gone wrong here?
Well, you're right, Emma, to call it a ceasefire agreement, because he was the Trump administration was trying to pretend they'd solved this border dispute between these two countries, and we're calling it a peace. But of course, it wasn't. Nothing was solved. They just decided to lay down their arms in interest of a trade negotiation with a trade deal with the US. So nothing has been solved. And this is just another example of, I guess, the testy relationship between the two sides. And when you have two sets of armies and soldiers, staring at each other across a border, I guess some may have, kind of itchy trigger fingers, and a few errant bullets sent across the border can quickly end up in airstrikes being launched. So I would say nothing new has happened to trigger this. What the Cambodians are saying is that the Thais were doing maneuvers yesterday to try and kind of instigate confrontation. So what may have happened is the Thai soldiers were on the border clearing paths, digging things, and some soldiers on the Cambodian side took shots at them, and then things spiral, and suddenly we have F-16s in the air. So it's very much a similar deal to what happened in July. But we'll have to see whether this now continues for a few more days like before, or if the parties can, agree to get back to that ceasefire.
We have the Malaysian Prime Minister speaking in the last few hours. He helped to broker the original ceasefire. And he's told the two sides to exercise restraint because and I'm quoting here, it risks unravelling the careful work that has gone into stabilising relations between the two neighbours. It's a sense here that everybody desires peace, and that the work to try to ensure it works phenomenally deeply, and it's very hard to do.
Yes, Anwar Ibrahim has come out and said he's deeply concerned. We expect, Donald Trump and the White House to probably say something when they awake. The time zones don't act in their favor at the moment. But I guess, what these deals don't reflect is what's going on in the ground. Since that ceasefire, there's been a lot of posters and things going around on the internet, lambasting Mr. Ibrahim and Donald Trump, because the Thais don't necessarily like what's happened and how they've been forced into this agreement with the Cambodians. And I guess what I would say is there's more to this than just this old border dispute. There's a secondary a story that's been running alongside this to do with all of these scam centers that are in Cambodia, and people suspect a lot of that money goes to prop up the administration in Cambodia. Now, there's been so many stories coming out that have been implicating Thai politicians in this and who's been taking money from what. The Thais have suddenly had to act on these scam centers because of pressure from the US, from Korea, from Hong Kong, from the Brits. And so suddenly they're taking action and against these scam centers. And that obviously threatens a key revenue stream for Hun Sen in Cambodia. So yes, there is this old dispute between the two countries, but there's also a lot more going on that we don't quite understand. And I think we're in a similar situation as we were back in July. There's not a lot of idea why this is happening. I think the Thais do seem a bit confused about what's going on, and why this keeps this dispute keeps rumbling on, and what really is going on in Phnom Penh. So until we figure that out, I think this might continue.
James Chambers in Bangkok, thank you very much indeed for that update. You're listening to The Globalist. Just nudging 10:10 a.m. in Damascus, 7:10 a.m. here in London. Now, this time last year, Syria was experiencing profound moments of change. After a 24-year-long grip over the country, President Bashar al-Assad had just fled the country for Russia. Rebels led by Ahmed al-Sharaa were on course to take the capital Damascus following a lightning offensive. Well, 12 months on, al-Sharaa is interim president and has already made his debut at the UN General Assembly, the first such appearance by a Syrian leader in 6 decades. So what about the rest of the country? Well, these were the fireworks celebrations a year on in Homs yesterday. Well, Well, the sound of those celebrations were recorded by Heidi Pett. She's an investigative journalist based in Damascus. She arrived in the country just a few days after the fall of Bashar al-Assad and has been following the developments throughout the year. A very good morning to you, Heidi.
Good morning.
So yesterday in Homs, what were people saying to you?
I mean, the mood across all of Syria at the moment is, of kind of celebration, jubilation, marking this first year since the fall of the regime. And everywhere you go, people are driving around in their cars with, Syrian flags. They're sort of hanging out the windows, beeping their horns. There are fireworks going off all the time. Which sort of is interesting to me, right? Because this is a country that has experienced 14 years of brutal war. Pretty much everybody has PTSD. And it always makes me think of this poem there's a Palestinian poet, Naomi Shihab Nye, who says, to enjoy fireworks, you would have to have lived a different kind of life. And that just doesn't seem true for Syrians. Their love for fireworks remains undimmed. And so we've seen gatherings, across the country. Umayyad Square in Damascus last night was full all the night. People didn't sleep. But in Homs yesterday, it was quite interesting, right? Because we had the government had organised a couple of rallies specifically in Alawite neighbourhoods, which is one of the minorities in Syria that has experienced real problems in the last year, sectarian massacres, kidnappings and killings. So they'd organised a small event just for the Alawite community yesterday in Homs ahead of the broader celebrations today, because they're not the only group that has sort of complicated feelings about how this year has gone. Many Syrians are experiencing challenges with the economy. They're having trouble supporting themselves, buying food. And the movement towards the values of the revolution that people fought for, which was, justice and dignity, there are many, many Syrians who are not necessarily thrilled with the government's scorecard on that. And one of them is a man that I spoke to, Shadi Haroun, who spent 9 years in Assad's jails. And when he was released, he fled the country and he went on to head up one of the biggest sort of prisoner rights associations that was working outside Syria. And when he came back just a couple of days after the fall of the regime last year, he was able to go to these prisons and revisit the places that he and his family were detained. And since then, he's had this incredible journey. He now works for the International Center for Transitional Justice, which just kind of tells you how far things have changed in this country. But he still has some reservations.
So it was an amazing, year with hope, but also as a victim, as a survivor, the effect of absence of justice on our community. After a year of liberation, victims, families, survivors still wait a window for justice. Victims also wait this bridging with government, build trust again with government. So this is the year of hope for justice, for dignity, for citizenship, and also year of fighting to save our narrative.
What will you do to celebrate? Or will you celebrate? Does it feel like a celebration to you?
So we made our celebration in Saqba, in Al-Ghouta, and also in Douma. It's kind of renew the commitment to our cause as a Syrian. It's not just like to rebuild the country. It also like we have the right to have a good Syria, to have a just Syria. So this is what celebration means to me, actually, to my family.
Heidi, that's one man you were talking to yesterday on the anniversary of the departure of Bashar al-Assad. The man in charge of the country, Ahmed al-Sharaa, has done very well on the international stage. He has won the conversation with Saudi Arabia and indeed with the West that he is the man who should lead Syria into its future. Yet, when you look at Syria, it is still in ruins and it is still very divided politically, where you have Kurds in control in the northeast and you have the Druze in separate parts of the country wanting their own state.
Yeah, and I think that's an indication of the fracturing that we saw of this country over the 14 years of war and the kind of internationalization of the conflict as well, right? We've got the Kurdish-dominated administration in the northeast, which was, of course, supported by a lot of Western partners in the fight against ISIS, and they were left alone to kind of run their own race up there for a very long time. And they instituted their own sort of form of governance where they've enshrined, co-leaders of men and women in institutions and things like that. And they're reluctant to give up those, those kind of institutions, and they're reluctant to give up the territory that they also hold. And so we've actually seen today the administration up there has banned people from celebrating the anniversary of the regime, which is an incredibly divisive move. But what they're worried about is that the majority of that population that they govern, which is actually Arab, that those celebrations will turn into protests against their rule, because there are many people in the northeast who do want to see a unified Syria and want to rejoin the government in Damascus. And as you mentioned, Sweden in the south, again, they were kind of self-ruled for many years in the later period of the Assad regime. And again, they were reluctant to give up that control and independence. And also they weren't sure if they trusted Syria's new leader, who up until only a month ago was still a listed terrorist. And so what we saw was clashes down there. We saw Israel getting involved, bombing central Damascus, ostensibly in support of the Druze, to tell the government here to not send in the army. And so we have these large pockets of Syria which are dominated by the country's significant minorities that are still outside government control.
Heidi, thank you so much for joining us. That was Heidi Pett joining us on the line from Damascus. You're listening to Monocle Radio. It is 15:17 in Hong Kong, which is where we head now, because Hong Kong citizens voted on Sunday to elect members of its Legislative Council. But security was tightened in the northern district of Tai Po, close to the border with mainland China, where a fire engulfed 7 residential towers, killing 159 people. The focus was on turnout, with authorities scrambling to avoid a broader public backlash. To tell us more, I'm joined now by Tom Grundy, the editor-in-chief and co-founder of Hong Kong Free Press. Good afternoon, Tom.
Thanks for having me.
So just lay out what happened yesterday, because there was the political business of electing a legislative council, but there was that fear that this would either be seen as a protest vote or as that people just wouldn't come out at all.
Yeah, we don't really talk about, who won or whatnot. The pro-government camp won, as only they can really enter. The questions are really about turnout and maybe blank or protest ballots. Traditional Democrats, the opposition, are either in prison, they're in self-exile, or they've quit politics. And ahead of the last polls in 2021, Beijing revamped things so only patriots can run. They're pre-vetted by a committee headed by the city's leader. They undergo national security checks. They need nominations, multiple hoops, to jump through. Calls for blank ballots and boycotts are now banned, although you can still do both. So not exactly a competitive race. There were some TV forums, but no proper disagreements. And as much as some of the lawmakers in the last cohort said they were kind of independent, everyone ultimately voted with the government, almost without exception. So results not too surprising, but it's that turnout that is of most concern. 31.9% compared to 32.2% in 2021. So quite similar, really. And that's with 33,000 fewer people voting this time. That compares, by the way, to 40, 50, 60% in the days before this electoral revamp.
So explain to us a little bit just how strong there is a backlash or any sense of protest given what happened to these residential towers.
There is none. It's national security for breakfast, lunch and dinner, top to bottom, bottom to top. The tentacles of this multi-billion-dollar Hong Kong dollar, project are in every department and in every part of society, every part of civil society, which some have observed, was arguably more absent during this crisis in Tai Po. There were several arrests over the weekend for enticing protest ballots, but the only way you're going to really identify any kind of dissent is that turnout figure, I guess. And boy, the authorities have been concerned about it. They have spent $164 million US organizing these polls, and the city is plastered with promotions. Civil servants strongly urged to vote, private companies offering leave and other incentives to vote, free transport, museums and swimming pools over the weekend. And it feels like every government department had to promote the polls in some way. But at the end of the day, it barely moved the needle really by a couple of percent. And we're about to report on the fact that there have been a record number of blank ballots of about 3%-ish.
So what does this now bode for the long-term future, given the lack of engagement, the very conscious lack of engagement by Hong Kong citizens with the authorities when it comes to voting?
Well, there are elections in Iran, in China, in North Korea. They're important to some respects for credibility, and it's turnout that's been in the focus here. But you've also mentioned this deadly blaze in Taipo, 159 dead, 30 odd still missing. That's a bit of a test now in the national security era. In the mainland, there is little tolerance really as the weeks pass after certain tragedies, earthquakes or disasters, for people, organizing and in their quest for justice. And indeed, overnight, tributes, flowers were cleared from a huge memorial site just outside these charred towers. And that came about a day after a senior national security police figure said that, the kind of organization, slogans, pamphlets that were appearing up there had somewhat echoes or parallels to what they were seeing during the 2019 protests on unrest. So it feels like the city is kind of getting back to normal today. Nothing's been said officially, but roads have been reopened. Websites and government sites are no longer in mournful black and white. And there seems to be this sense that, the mourning period is kind of unofficially over, but searches are still happening for 30 odd people they're still trying to identify as potentially missing.
Tom Grundy in Hong Kong, thank you so much for joining us on The Globalist.
Craft is a matter of perspective, a unique outlook, an obsessive attention to detail. With UBS's Chief Investment Office Houseview, we're focused on identifying the latest investment opportunities and market risks to help you achieve your financial goals, so you get the big picture broken down into thought-provoking insights. Delivered daily and curated by over 200 globally connected, locally active analysts. UBS. Banking is our craft.
Let's continue with today's newspapers. Joining me in the studio, Vincent McAviney, political reporter, broadcaster, regular Monocle Radio voice. Good morning, Vinny.
Good morning.
With an excellent mug.
Yes.
Brought your tea in.
I brought some hot water. Got to warm up the vocal cords.
Excellent. There we go. This is a man who knows what he's doing. Right. Swig of hot water. Deep breath. How's Monday's papers?
Lots of interesting stories, actually. It's one of those days where there's no sort of set lead across the papers, everyone going for different things. But first one that stood out for me was the I paper. UK in race to build hybrid naval force to defend against Russian underwater attacks. And this is something we started hearing about last week. Cooperation between the UK and Norway in particular to try and stop Russia's actions in sort of shared waters and international sort of European waters, with Russia having increased its incursions in the past 2 years by about 30%, not only with its traditional navy, but also, we believe, with submarines and with its sort of shadow fleet, using these container ships and other ships in order to come in, we think, to deploy underwater drones to assess and analyse where Europe's main communications and undersea cables are for energy as well. Also, we understand to sort of launch small drones which then go and buzz over military sites. And what's remarkable about this piece as well is that it's been revealed that Russia has been using these Shadow Fleet cargo ships to sneak, we believe, spies in and out of countries who then land at a port, a sort of naval port, near a naval port, then go sort of do reconnaissance and we don't know what. And so this is now a new force called Atlantic Bastion, which is going to operate more cohesively naval European ships, drones, both on sea and in the air as well, to try and combat these incursions and keep track of what is going on, because so much of our economy is so vulnerable if those undersea cables are attacked.
There is an assumption here that the British naval fleet is up to it. And there has been so much criticism over so many years now that when a decision was made quite a long time ago to move away from conventional warfare and assume that every battle would be fought online and by drones, that the UK and many other nations have let their defences slip here. Where does the UK stand here? What does it do? I mean, you said it's tying up with the likes of Norway, but it's not the great naval fleet that many would imagine it would be.
No, I mean, you go back about 15 years ago when they commissioned the 2 new aircraft carriers, the Prince of Wales and the Queen Elizabeth. There was a couple of years where they weren't even going to have planes that could launch off them, and they were talking about building and then mothballing one and selling it off. But what this article seems to suggest is I don't think we're going to see navies in the traditional sense of big ships anymore. It's going to be smaller frigates that can deploy submersibles, that can deploy air drones. But also here, there are 2 naval officers, and they are literally using a controller which is quite akin to a PlayStation controller to control a small seaboat drone 100 miles from where they are, I think down in Portsmouth. And the drone was in an undisclosed location, and you sort of look at they're sort of surrounded by screens, so you can see here. And they are literally using what looks to be a sort of gaming controller, because people are so used to using those now, to part pilot this vessel. And I think it's going to be a lot more of that kind of craft that we're seeing, rather than your big aircraft carriers.
Okay, let's move to the New York Times. Trump takes starring role at Kennedy Center honours. Tell us all about this, Vinny.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is a classic, and as I said a few times now, the biggest switch in my mindset towards Trump was seeing him as a modern reality star, which is essentially someone like on The Real Housewives, whichever franchise you want. For this, obviously, it's Washington, D.C. He has basically hijacked, in the sort of very dictatorial style that he does, he's hijacked the Kennedy Center honors. Beforehand, he joked that he was heading to the Trump Kennedy Center, so he's trying to rechristen this. He wants to rechristen one of the ballrooms, the Melania Trump room at this center. And last night he did something no president has done before. So he sort of walks the red carpet, and then he goes and actually presents it himself. Normally presidents sit in the box. It's a night about the honorees who are also with them, and you see performances. So you go back sort of to Obama days, and you had sort of Carole King being honored in the box, and then you had Aretha Franklin come out and perform, Natural Woman and those kind of things. No, he was hosting. He was saying he was doing his best Jimmy Carson. He also joked at one point that he should nominate himself next year, given that he had an entertainment career.
You'd almost think he wasn't president.
Exactly. But there is a sort of a little sad story in this as well, is that the medals, I don't know if you've ever seen them, they have for decades had this sort of rainbow ribbon around them. And it was designed, and it's meant to be sort of representing all the colours of the arts. Now, apparently, MAGA thought that looked a little bit gay. And so they redesigned it. But the medals were designed by a family called the Baturin family. They've been making them since the first ceremony 47 years ago. They're a small family business. And so Trump just gave it to Tiffany. And they just came up with a slightly reworked medal with just a sort of blue ribbon around it rather than the colourful one.
Which is, dare I say it, very elegant, but perhaps not going in the right direction for some. Finally, let's talk about an article in the Times. It's been widely reported. The Louvre has had another bad day. Yeah,
this is a bad day for the Louvre, and I think it's now going to be under a lot more scrutiny, I think, than it's had for some time, because it's being seen as symbolic for, I think, all of France and the sort of end of Macron's presidency. I remember actually in 2017, I was at the Louvre when Macron came out the night that he won, and it was a big ceremony, and there was pyrotechnics and everything, and he sort of talked about this being a symbol of France and that he would protect it and rebuild it and renew it. And at the end of his term, we now understand about 400 books, which they're saying were sort of those consulted by Egyptologists, have been damaged in this leak, which they say they've known about for sort of a year or two, but it's not scheduled to be repaired until next year, which seems remarkable because there is nothing like water damage in a building to really the way that it can spread, it can cause absolute chaos. So they've said they're going to dry these out and rebind them. But these things tend to happen in threes, don't they? So we've had the jewel heist, now we've had the flood. So, who knows, we might be reporting on a fire there next. Hopefully not. But it shows that this building really needs some major work, and it's a bit of a sad indictment for France's reputation.
Let's not tempt fate.
No.
Vincent McAvenny, thank you so much for joining me in the studio. You're listening to The Globalist on Monocle Radio with me, Emma Nelson, with the time here in London, 30 minutes past 7. It's 7:30. Let's have a look at some of the other stories we're following today. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is in London for talks with the UK Prime Minister and French President. Mr Zelensky will then travel to Brussels and Rome for talks on the peace process aimed at ending Russia's full-scale invasion of his country. Meanwhile, Italy is to increase support for Ukraine. The Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni said she had a phone call with the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky this weekend, during which she promised more emergency supplies to support Ukraine's energy infrastructure and population. Moscow has welcomed the US revision of Washington's national security strategy, which states now that Europe is facing civilizational erasure and does not cast Russia as a threat to the US. Several EU analysts have warned that it threatens freedom of speech and echoes language used by the Kremlin. And a water leak at the Louvre in Paris has damaged hundreds of books just weeks after jewellery worth more than $100 million was stolen. The museum said between 300 and 400 works were affected by the leak, which happened in late November. This is The Globalist. Stay tuned. It is 8:31 a.m. in Bucharest, which is where we head now. For the first time in 7 months, Romanian capital Bucharest has a new mayor. They are a liberal, despite predictions that the city could be led by the far right. Alison Mutlow is a journalist and manager of the universal.net news site, and she joins us on the line from Bucharest. Good morning, Alison.
Good morning.
So who won?
It's a man called Ciprian Ciucu. He was a district mayor. He's known as a reformer, friendly man. He focused on investments, administrative reorganisation and urban regeneration. And he soundly won the mayoral race, despite predictions that it would be very close and unpredictable. He very easily won with 36%, more than 36% of the vote.
Why had these predictions that the far right would take the city grown so loud?
Romania's had a very turbulent year. Presidential elections were cancelled a year ago over reports from Romania's secret services that Russia had meddled in the campaign to artificially inflate a pro-Russian candidate. And Romania's top court then cancelled the elections and we had a rerun. So that really polarised people and people lost trust in the institutions. And there has been a surge to some extent of the far right, with people believing that mainstream politicians are out of touch and they are corrupt. And these far right politicians, including the runner-up in this mayoral election, come with a very emotional message of justice and God. Something like God actually resonates a lot with Romanians. And they come with vague but emotionally appealing messages. And their supporters, voters, actually think they are offering something that Romanian mainstream politicians have been unable to offer. So that explains why some people, a rising number of people, but not a majority, are flocking to these far-right parties.
This is a relief for the central government, is it, to have a pro-European local mayor?
It is a huge relief and a boost. The centrist government, it's pro-European, has been pushing through some very unpopular austerity measures because Romania has the largest budget deficit in the European Union. It was 9.3% last year. So it's been battling to implement these austerity measures. It's increased VAT and other taxes, and it's trying to cut other costs, which have not been popular with the Romanians, particularly as we go into the winter when costs rise. So having such a categorically clear victory for its own candidate, who was like 15 points ahead of the person who came second, is a huge relief and a boost to particularly the Prime Minister, who is who is the author of all these austerity measures. It's a big confidence vote for the government.
And in terms of a confidence vote for Bucharest itself, just recently we heard that Corinthia hotels are opening there. We also have a Trump Towers on the way. The sense that Bucharest now has ambition.
Bucharest is a rapidly changing city. It's an absolute mishmash, quite charming in a way, of old buildings, new buildings, of a lot of, there's a lot of traffic. There's public transport. We're having a huge subway, like an underground built to the airport at the moment, which is causing a lot of disruption. But there's a lot of movement going on, a lot of investment going on, buildings going up, new buildings going up, residential, commercial buildings. So there's a lot of things going on. There's also changes. Old parts of Bucharest are being rehabilitated. They're being made to look more modern. But it's a very crowded city, and there is a big problem with traffic, and not just with traffic, with the water systems and the heating systems as well. So it's a very big job to be mayor of Bucharest. But Bucharesters, they didn't turn out in high numbers, but they have decisively voted for this candidate.
Indeed. And where does that place Bucharest international and Romania more generally internationally, now that we have the government very happy that it has a pro-European local mayor, but we have that continual push and pull with the United States, with several NATO bases in Romania, and the sense that Donald Trump wants to dial this all down a bit. Yes, there may be a Trump Towers on the way to Bucharest, but the way that Bucharest has to now navigate its way towards the future, and the way that Romania has to navigate its way towards the future.
You're right. It is a complicated situation. It is tricky. We've had Russian drones flying over Romania. Romania shares a 630, I think, kilometre border with Ukraine. It does have major NATO bases, and we have the, as you said, the sort of pull and push of Donald Trump in the US relations with Romania. Romania does consider the US a major strategic partner. It has a strategic partnership with the US, but on the same time, it's also a strong and firm member of the European Union, and does have a pro-European president and prime minister. But it is a tricky path to navigate. But I have to say, Romania is quite good at navigating tricky paths. And having a clear result in Bucharest, having a clear government and a president, of course there are internal political battles as there are in any country, but it does make it a bit easier. But for sure, Romania will seek to maintain its strategic relations with the United States. And I think the United States is interested in Romania. It's just Donald Trump is taking his focus off Europe. And that is a problem not just for Romania, but all of Europe. How do they realign themselves? How do they keep this relationship? But also being aware of the new geopolitical realities, which is a shift. It's not as it has been for decades. Things are changing. So I think all of Europe has to reconsider how they're going to deal with this, including Romania. But Romania is quite good at dealing with ambiguities. I will say that about it.
Alison Mutler in Bucharest, thank you as ever for joining us on Monocle Radio.
IQ, EQ, and AI. 3 components key to the craft of innovation at UBS. Because to stay ahead in a rapidly evolving age, you need a partner with decades of experience, endless passion for the work, and a finger on the pulse of leading technologies, bridging human expertise with artificial intelligence, all to elevate you. UBS. Banking is our craft.
Now, the US President Donald Trump has warned that Netflix's very big market share could cause problems for the streaming giant's efforts to seek approval for its multi-billion-dollar acquisition of Warner Brothers Discovery. But what will the planned buyout mean for the future of entertainment and the people who work in the industry? Well, to tell us now, I'm joined down the line by Scott Bryan, TV critic and broadcaster. Good morning, Scott.
Morning.
Let's get this reaction from Donald Trump immediately. The fact that he's warned that the very big market share could cause problems. What do we actually think that means?
I mean, I think it's quite hard to read at the moment. I think essentially there has been sort of this expectation on Netflix's side that Donald Trump would pass through this deal. In the US, we've been having a long series of big mergers between big companies, which in history would have normally had a bit more resistance in terms of monopolies or competition, sort of not being passed through. But we've seen, of course, with the purchase of CBS, which is another US network, that pretty much went through or was going through pretty seamlessly. There was the expectation that Skydance would be the overall victor in terms of taking over Warner Brothers, and David Ellison, who is from Skydance, who is seen to be very close to Trump. That would seem to get a pass. And on Netflix's side, the sort of key people within the business had been reported to have been meeting Trump in the weeks leading up to this deal, stating that they expected it to go through. So to have this sort of comment by Trump suggests that there could be a bit of friction ahead. I think we're just going to have to wait and see whether essentially Netflix's purchase is allowed to go through as planned.
Indeed, Donald Trump has said he'll be involved in the decision about whether to clear the transaction. So that may have sort of thrown the clean path to acquisition off into a slightly different direction. Is there a sense that this will actually make Netflix more either valuable, successful, or indeed better?
Well, I think the interesting thing is trying to work out exactly what Netflix's long-term plans are for purchasing Warner Brothers. I mean, part of it is because of their library. You've had the sort of HBO hits such as Succession, Sex and the City, Game of Thrones, also franchises like Harry Potter and Friends. I mean, this suggests that in the long term that will be available on Netflix's library and really enhancing their offering, as well as, of course, I think the added subscriber base. I mean, there's not really been an announcement whether HBO Max, which is the streaming service that a lot of Warner Brothers content is on, will be put into Netflix, but you can imagine it will do in the future, massively boosting its subscription base by another 100 million or so users. But I think it's the fact that at the end of the day, Warner Brothers is very much a legacy business. It's been finding it very difficult to navigate the streaming wars purely by Netflix because of our changing viewing habits, but also the impact that has had on cinema, people going to the cinema for their releases. Plus also, I guess, challenges in regards to whether Warner Brothers will be nimble enough to be able to sort of have a sort of big streaming service which is known for being incredibly quick to in innovation, whether the purchase of Warner Brothers will be slowed down, will slow down Netflix in some way, because of course it'll be a massive company if they are joined together. I think it's a little bit wait and see on that. I think Netflix certainly thinks it will be a huge benefit to their business. I guess it's down to the consumers to work out whether they are able to go anywhere else if they're not happy with it.
And indeed, there will be an inevitable restructuring. Job cuts have already been mentioned. The actress Jane Fonda has said that the proposed deal will threaten the entire entertainment industry.
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly challenges. Quite a lot of the unions, particularly in acting and writing, have spoken out against this. I think the idea is if there are, if it's going to be a much more centralized, down to one company, then surely in the long term that will mean job cuts. Surely that will mean fewer releases. Surely that will impact the amount of sort of productions that end up being within cinemas. I mean, I think Netflix has said on their part that they are committing to ensuring the spending plans for the company remains the same as it has been, that all future film releases will be releasing as planned. I think it's a lot of it is down to people reading between the lines of what Netflix are saying. And there was something by Ted Sarandos, who's the sort of current co-CEO, saying something along the lines of they're going to ensure that movie releases in future from Warner's will be more, quote, commercially viable, something about that. And I think people are thinking, well, hang on, what does that actually mean? Considering that Netflix is very much a home entertainment company rather than geared towards cinemas. And also because if they do show films in cinemas, Netflix, they end up only showing them for a few days, purely maybe to get onto an Oscar quota. So that's going to be an interesting sort of look. And I think also personally will be interesting to see kind of what the direction they take in regards to sporting rights. Netflix has had an increased sort of interest in sport, showing a lot of boxing matches or something around Formula One. But now outside the US, there seems to be a lot of reporting around their ownership of TNT Sports, which of course contains loads of sport coverage, so potentially a rival to ESPN, which would be quite a big departure, I think, from the type of content that people normally expect by Netflix.
Scott Bryan, thank you so much, as ever, for joining us on Monocle Radio. Well, listening to that and continuing with film news, I'm joined here in the studio by our film critic, Karen Krasanovic. Good morning, Karen. We'll get to the other stuff in a minute, but first, you were just listening there about Scott was talking about the commercial viability of this deal, and you were nodding furiously that this is the important part of this Netflix Warner Brothers Discovery deal.
There's so much of this deal that is causing alarm bells, and also it's almost like when the council says or a politician says, if you elect me, this is going to happen. You go, yay, and then of course it doesn't, or something the opposite happens. I mean, I think the one thing that, and I think Scott said this, is that we're really concerned about Netflix's passion for the big screen, which I don't think it has, despite the fact that it owns the Egyptian theater, which it bought 5 years ago and renovated it. They do only show things on the widescreen when they have to, because basically it is a home entertainment a company, and a lot of what it makes, a lot of it's good, it's nice, but a lot of it, another critic was saying, it's just background noise. You just have it on and nobody's watching it really, or you look at all these titles and think, I don't want to see any of these.
Or I might watch it another day and then forget. Exactly. And that where does that leave Warner Brothers, who Scott was calling it a legacy company, which almost sounds as if the dust is settling on the building already.
It is a legacy company. It was always it's had a lot of hits this year, a lot of hits, and yes, it can, and yet it can't stay viable. And that's the real question about the change of the industry. And it is a legacy. It's always brought us wonderful things. And also another worry is what's going to happen to HBO. Which is another, and it's a sense I've been listening to. I think it's the death of quality brands. HBO Max was considered a quality brand. Warner's is considered a quality brand.
Will the names disappear? Will it be 100% Netflix? Because one would imagine, though, that any brand worth its salt would say we keep the HBO, we keep the Warner Brothers in order to maybe differentiate within your business, but also at the same time to actually retain that emotional connection with its customers.
It would be smart. I mean, if you're going to buy Vogue, keep what Vogue means. Yeah, absolutely. It would be smart. But I think that Netflix is probably just going to fold it in, and I think that's probably do the Bugs Bunny. That's all, folks.
What about the creativity and the jobs?
There's already a big constriction in the UK over that, and there's been worries about the impact of AI and other things. A lot of productions here have been on hiatus, and I think they're just going to see more and more jobs in the industry being shed.
Okay, let's move on to other areas of cinema. We're already talking about the Oscars. We haven't even had our Christmas parties yet, let alone the Oscar parties. But you're here to gaze into the crystal ball as to what's going to happen next spring. So off you go, Karen.
Oh, thank you very much.
Lay out the stall. This is the first dip of the toe into Oscar world. So off we go.
My whole foot's been in Oscar world all year. Okay. I have to say that Oscars, people can poo-poo them and say, nobody watches them anymore. They used to be a big thing on television, and they're not. And how important are they? There's so many other awards. Well, they're still the Oscars. And speaking of brands, they have kept that brand going very well. So in Hollywood, for the last few months, there's been a lot of promotion going on. I'm just going to read a couple of the lovely promotions to keep these films in your mind. Right, at Halloween, Frankenstein had a cocktail reception with drones on top of the iconic Capitol Records building. That looked amazing. Okay, mid-November, Marty Supreme had a promotional orange blimp showing in New Mexico, Texas, and
which says so much about movies.
Well, it's if you haven't seen it, look at our blimp. Ryan Coogler recreated the bar in Sinners. Cynthia Erivo sang "Feeling Good" at the Macy's Thanksgiving Parade. All of these things. Also, let's not forget, you went to a free Begonia screening in Hollywood in October if you had your head shaved.
Why are they doing this? A moment ago we're talking about Warner Brothers being legacy and that fear that excuse me, that the big screen will be folded into home entertainment.
Absolutely.
And then you mentioned the blimp and head shaving when it comes to stunts to getting people into the cinema. One wonders whether there is a connection.
Oh yeah, of course there is. I mean, there's been cinema has been quote unquote dying for decades, and this is just a way of getting the name of the film in your mind, and it's what the red carpet does as well. It's part of the ecosystem of selling a film, of getting bums on seats, of getting people to be aware of the name, whether they're waiting for it to be streamed or whether they're going to see it on the big screen. So that's what I'm talking about. Okay, now, I want people to be aware of what they need to see for the Oscars, at least at this point.
Pen's ready.
Okay.
Go.
You really only need to see 5 films.
That sounds like
Isn't
quite
that
a lot
nice?
of work.
No, it's not. That's 10 hours, right? Okay. Right. You have to see Hamnet.
Yes.
Okay. You have to see Sinners. You have to have seen One Battle After Another.
Yes.
Marty Supreme. The Secret Agent. Okay, I'm lying.
Hang on, this
Maybe
is a
there's
lot
more.
now. Yeah, hang on a minute.
I think it might be 7 films, actually.
Okay, Hamnet, Sinners, One Battle
After Another.
Next one, Marty
Okay,
Supreme.
Marty Supreme.
Go on.
If I Had Legs, I Would Kick You.
That's the name of a film.
That's the name of a film. You'll love it. You will love it. Rose Byrne. The Secret Agent.
This is getting longer.
And just one more. Sentimental Value.
Okay.
There you go.
There,
and now you've pretty much...
1, 2, 3, 5, 6...
Okay, there's 7.
There's 7. So no prizes for maths, but fabulous prizes for recommending.
Thank you.
We've got about 10 seconds to explain why.
Okay, because these are basically going to cover Best Picture, Best Director, Actor, Actress, and Supporting.
Karen Krzanovich, that is phenomenally useful. Thank you so much for joining me in the studio. Oh, quickly, in the next 10 seconds, what film do we see this Christmas?
Well, I would say one to avoid is probably Christmas Karma, but look at the poster and see if you like it. Go and watch it. And there's another one that's not released here, but look for it anyway. It's called The Baltimorans.
Okay.
The Baltimorans.
The Baltimorans.
The Baltimorans.
Why is that good?
Because it's about a man on Christmas Eve who breaks a tooth and spends the whole Christmas Eve with his emergency dentist. It's hilarious.
The reinvention of It's a Wonderful Life.
There you go.
Thank you so much indeed. Karen Krzanovich, you're listening to The Globalist on Monocle Radio. Now, you may have just heard from that recommendation from Karen that the Christmas season is in full swing, and here at Monocle it is the case as well. It brings with us our annual markets happening at our headquarters all around the world. This weekend, at Monocle Radio, we all headed off to Paris for the very first edition at our cafe and shop in the 2nd arrondissement of the Monocle Christmas market. Amid the bustle, I caught up with several makers showcasing their wares, including the brilliant Nicholas Maiorelli, who is the founder of Yesi, an alcohol-free Italian aperitif, which actually was rather delicious.
It's interesting that you say that it's a bit of a contradiction. We actually started with my grandmother's Amaro recipe. So my grandmother, like a lot of Italian nonne, makes her own homemade limoncello, coffee liqueur, and Amaro. And so we started with her Amaro recipe, and we spent over a year trying to figure out how to get those same sensations, those same notes, those same flavor profile, but without the alcohol. And it's difficult, honestly, but we're very proud of what we've achieved. And it's true that we really set out to make a drink that is not a replacement for something else, but is its own unique.
Are you able to tell us, first of all, what happened to Nonna, the woman who made coffee liqueur limoncello at home? Frankly, everybody needs one of those people in their lives. But how you went through the de-alcoholization process. Do you create something which has alcohol and then you remove it, or do you start from scratch and build up?
The latter. We start from scratch and build up. When you de-alcoholize a product, you really take away a lot of the complexity from it because you're essentially just boiling the liquid. And so we knew that that's something we didn't want to do. So what we use is a base of organic cherry and ginger juice, to which we then add natural extracts and infusions until we reach that perfect balance that, like you says, makes you feel like you're drinking a Negroni.
What was it that made you think, okay, we can do something good here with the Negroni? Because that's one of the most powerful yet 3 simplest ingredients to put into a cocktail. It's what? Gin, Campari and vermouth, all of which have powerful alcoholic tones to them. How do you go about getting rid of that?
That's an interesting question. You know, we're really proud of the fact that we've created a base that's extremely versatile, right? So like you said, we serve the aperitivo over ice and call it an alcohol-free Negroni, but you can use it as a base to make cocktails both with and without alcohol, right? If you want to make a low ABV Negroni by adding a splash of gin, it's perfect. It's really incredible. And you can drink more than 2 and still stand on your feet at the end of the night.
Are you finding people choosing this because they want to avoid alcohol, or simply choosing because it's actually just a very delicious drink in itself?
More the second. We find that most of the people that really love Yessi are people that really love a good cocktail. And so when they choose Yessi, it's more because maybe are starting the night with an alcohol-free cocktail and then they're going to switch to wine or something else with alcohol, or vice versa, right? They've maybe had 1 or 2 and they say, okay, I've got a long night ahead of me. Let me pace myself. Let me go for an alcohol-free cocktail as my next drink.
Where does Yessi, the name, come from?
Excellent question. Yessi means to be, right? Essere, être, in Friulan, which is the regional dialect spoken in Friuli, which is where my family is from and where my nonna still lives.
Wonderful. And so Yessi, and also has, would you like a drink? Yessi. So would I like a drink? Yessi, I would. So talk us through, so you've got a little flask with you, which is obviously a hot toddy on a Christmas market, incredibly good, but it can sort of take the edge off things a little bit. Talk us through what you've got in your flask and also let's have a taste.
Absolutely. So this is the simplest hot cocktail you can ever make. It is 1 part aperitivo, 1 part hot water, a little bit of honey, and a squeeze of fresh lemon.
You've just turned an aperitivo into a health drink. You do realise this. If you find yourself ill and you have a cold, that this actually sounds like it's going to cure you.
Absolutely. And remember, we use a base of organic ginger and cherry juice, so it also has a nice sort of digestive quality.
Amazing. I can't tell you, well, you can probably all tell how happy I am. Okay, so let's have a little thing. So there's one of those beautiful little portable cardboard cups is coming out. You talked about ginger and cherry as well. What else is in there that makes it bitter?
Yes, so we have ginger and cherry. We also use natural chili pepper extract. Has that nice little kick at the end of your throat, kind of mimics the feeling of drinking a strong liqueur. We have notes of bitter orange, rhubarb, gentian. Obviously, gentian is very typical in Italian bitters, but we really wanted to make sure we had a very layered, complex, nuanced bitterness, right? We didn't want just straight gentian. We have some bitter orange, rhubarb.
And you can't tell any of them in there because it just tastes like a hot Negroni, which actually sounds quite disgusting. But can I tell you, this is the most delicious thing to drink on a Saturday at the Monocle Christmas market. Tell me, what are the customers? How's business going here?
Business is amazing. Both here at the market and in general, people are really enthusiastic about Yessi, and so we're very, very grateful for that.
And will you always just do this, or are we looking at different products now? And what is the next step for Yessi?
That's an excellent question. I get asked that all the time, and to be honest, I don't have a good answer. We're thinking about doing some limited edition, maybe some ready-to-drink cocktails. But the truth is, right, we're really proud of our heritage, our story. Nonneda, who inspired the whole project, who loves Yessi.
And we all like a sober grandma occasionally, don't we?
Okay, so as much as she loves Yessi and is proud of what we're doing, she has a little bit of difficulty with the concept of an alcohol-free aperitif. So even though she does drink it, she is known to put a splash of Prosecco or sparkling white wine to make her own sort of low ABV spritz.
A Yessi Sbagliato by Nonna.
Exactly. Nonna does Yessi Sbagliato.
Spiked with gin, no less. That was Nicholas Maiorelli speaking to at Monocle's Christmas market in Paris yesterday. Our London edition takes place right here at Midori House this weekend. Do stop by and say hello if you're in town. We have reindeer again, ladies and gentlemen. We have Father Christmas from Rovaniemi. We have tons of mulled wine. I don't think we have the pretend Negronis, though, which is a bit of a disaster. But anyway, that's all the time we have for today's programme. The warmest thanks to all my guests and to the producers, Chris Chermak, Angelica Jobson and Ryuma Takahashi. Our researcher was Joanna Mosa and our studio manager was Mariella Bavin, with editing assistance by Steph Chungu. After the headlines, more music on the way. The briefing's live at midday here in London. The Globalist is back at the same time tomorrow. Hope you can join me for that if you can. But for now, from me, Emma Nelson, goodbye. Thanks for listening. Have a great week.
With UBS, you have a truly global partner, incorporating new technologies, innovative approaches, and unexpected opportunities, leading you to insights that help answer the questions that matter, delivered with passion, care, and unmatched expertise. Because it's about rising with the dawn each day, knowing that we can do even better. That's what banking is to us. Not just work, but a craft. UBS. Advice is our craft.